South Korea is holding its first ever expo devoted to the drone industry. At the moment, it is the military sector that dominates the skies, but as Harry Fawcett reports from Busan, new civilian uses are constantly taking off.
It's race day for these pilots. Time to get down to business. 80 teams vying for the title on a hazardously windy day.
I was nervous and it was windy. The drone kept rising, so it was difficult.
Drone racing has only been an organised sport here for 4 months, but every place in this contest was snapped up in just a few minutes. It's all happening just a few metres from South Korea's first drone show, the largest such expo, organisers say, ever to be held in Asia. South Korea wants in on a fast-growing industry.
Drone technology has been developed here mainly in the military sector. We hope to promote the transfer of that technology to the civilian sector.
One such effort, a tilt-rotor drone, enabling helicopter-style takeoffs and landings and aeroplane-style horizontal flight. The military still dominates the South Korean drone industry, as it does the global one. What's changing is the ever easier access to this technology, encouraging startups to enter the fray. For instance, a drone that in its final form will mimic a bird of prey to keep smaller birds away from farms and airports.
We use open source based technologies to develop things very fast. So the price of this thing is actually affordable to the farmers around the world right now.
The consumer sector is one of the fastest growing. One analyst report suggesting it could be worth more than $4 billion a year by 2025.
And it's not hard to see why. These things have been getting ever cheaper, producing ever better quality images, and just about anybody can fly them. The problem on the horizon, though, is an increasingly heavy set of regulations, meaning that their use could be limited to within strictly defined areas.
There are concerns over legal liability, privacy and safety, and here in South Korea, the very real threat of North Korean drones. Several have been found crashed in recent years. South Korea enforces strict no-fly zones, among other regulations, partly as a result. Some drone makers worry that will mean their still small civilian industry will struggle for liftoff. But the racing enthusiasts have something to cheer. Restrictions on leisure use, at least, are set to be loosened. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, Busan, South Korea.
Yeah, Harry's sort of saying that there are growing concerns about the safety of the drone usage. Just this week, a UK Air Safety Agency reported 7 incidents between civilian aircraft and drones, 4 of which were classified as, quote, most serious. In one incident, a drone was flying at twice the legally allowed altitude and came within 25 metres of a Boeing 777 taking off at Heathrow. Some pilots have called for drones to be made visible on radar. But while laws regulating commercial drones might be slow to keep up, drone technology is advancing pretty fast. It wasn't that long ago that delivering parcels was considered a novelty. Now inventors tell us they will transport us too. And flying drones might even become a sport. Drone racing becoming quite a fixture. Not just in South Korea. Let's talk about this a little bit more, about the safety aspects, with Adam Bailey, Vice Chairman of RPAS, which is the UK's professional trade association for remotely piloted aircraft. I would imagine an awful lot of people didn't even imagine that sort of thing existed. And it wasn't always, obviously, your business. You were a chartered surveyor, but now you make a living out of it.
Yes, I've been a commercial pilot for about 3 years now. Previously, I was a building surveyor and working in that sector, and now we use drones to do elevated surveys of buildings and the like. And
do you think more and more people are thinking, actually, this is not only fun, but it's a way of making a living, and they're rushing into something they don't really understand?
Well, there is a growing number of commercial operators out there. There's now 1,300 holders of permissions for aerial work with the Civil Aviation Authority, but there's a growing number of national qualified entities, those such as UAV Air, Resource Group and the like, who do qualified training on behalf of the CAA to get there as well.
So let's say I wanted to do it, I wanted to give up doing this and become a drone pilot commercially. What would I have to do?
Well, first you need to decide what you're going to do with the drones. You know, it's no good just buying a drone saying I'm going to go and make a living with it unless you know what you're doing with it. Have to go and trained to fly it. And then you have to go and sit at ground school to understand what the air law and theory behind it is.
So I do have to do this. It's not just something that it's wise to do.
Yes.
By law, I have to do this?
Yeah, under the Air Navigation Order. Drones are specifically talked about under Articles 166 and 167. And anyone who wants to work commercially with a drone has to have a permission for aerial work issued by the Civil Aviation
Now, what
Authority.
about this incident with the Boeing 777 that we talked about there, where it got incredibly close to it? And I mean, if it got sucked into the engine, goodness knows what would have happened.
Well,
would that have been a commercial drone, or could it have just been, you know, Johnny out in the street making a bit of a mistake?
Well, if it was a commercial pilot, they would have been speaking to the air traffic controller long before they even undertook the flight. So the likelihood is, with this air proximity report, that it was someone who was mucking around with it, or it might not even be a drone. It might have been something that was previously called a UFO. You know, it might have been a plastic bag floating around. Because they don't know who it was, they can't identify it specifically.
Because these things could be pretty dangerous, couldn't they?
Drones can get rather large, depending on what they're used for and their size. You know, the likelihood is that this was something like the quadcopter on the screen behind you, something very small, about 1 kilo in weight. But they do grow larger, depending on their use and what they're carrying, really.
But the advice, Adam, thank you very much indeed. The advice is, if you're going to do it for a living, make sure you can earn some money, but before you actually start, make sure you know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot.